Hi, this is Alexander Scott, a member of LANDS, presenting this edition of our weekly updates. Before we continue, please visit our website at jalands.org or follow us on social media. Our Twitter handle is @lands_JA. We will begin with our COVID-19 vaccine rollout. Now, in an article from the Jamaica Observer titled Government in Discussion with 5 Countries for Vaccines Outside COVAX, Tufton, the Minister for Health, Dr. Christopher Tufton, expanded on his statements earlier this week. That is to say that Jamaica was speaking to India, Cuba, and China to acquire vaccines. In this statement to Parliament, captured in this article, the Health Minister noted that as it relates to the Chinese and Cuban vaccines, they're at an advanced stage of trial, and the Jamaican government is currently seeking information from Cuba and China about the clinical efficacy of these vaccines and just how many doses would be available for Jamaica. He also noted that the Indian government is making 500,000 doses available to CARICOM, and the Jamaican government is currently waiting to hear how many of those doses we will be getting. The minister also stated that the government has begun exploring the option of accessing the AstraZeneca vaccine currently being produced in Mexico and the United Kingdom. Those 2 countries bring the total countries we are speaking to 5. Now, we can't stress just how important it is to have as broad a net as possible when it comes to acquiring the vaccine. So these moves by the government to get the vaccine from as many sources as possible is commendable. The move to include vaccines outside the COVAX facility, particularly China and Cuba, mean looking towards the global south for supplies, and this may very well see us exceed the targets set by the ministry for the initial vaccination numbers, and such moves like that, must be built upon if we are going to ensure that the country, along with the entire world, can get back to business, can get to the business of rebuilding from this rubble that COVID-19 has left, this calamity has left upon us, where a global system has been shown not to work. Now, as it relates to the actual rollout program itself, the minister noted in an article in the Jamaica Gleaner titled Tufton to Meet with Key Stakeholders on COVID Vaccine Rollout that his ministry will be meeting with key stakeholder groups, including the National Vaccine Commission and the National Coordinating Committee. These meetings, which will be expanded to include private medical practitioners, will be seeking to finalize plans to introduce the first set of vaccines and to discuss the role of the medical practitioner in the distribution of this vaccine, especially among the vulnerable population. In a related article, this time from The Observer, simply titled Anti-Vax Fight, the health minister at the same sitting of Parliament stated that the government will be rolling out a sensitization program regarding the COVID-19 vaccine after he confirmed that the anti-vaccination movement has taken a firm hold in Jamaica. He was using statistics from the recent human papillomavirus the HPV vaccine program, using statistics from that program. He showed that there has been a large pushback and that there is a low low uptake of the vaccine, and this is related to the movement. And in that same breath, he pointed out that internationally, globally, UN statistics show that vaccines save at least 2 million lives, at least. Now, these 2 issues, the crafting of a vaccination rollout and the sensitization programs, the sensitization programs needed to combat this anti-vax movement, we firmly believe need to be done in tandem. One reason behind the overall suspicion of vaccines is a general distrust of the authorities, which are demanding that the population take it. And we believe that the people who will inevitably be taking this vaccine must be involved in the conversation beyond a simple education on the topic. If the people have a say in how the vaccine is distributed, in who gets primacy, and other things, then a real trust is built beyond simply this vaccine rollout, and we'll see not a mere acceptance of this vaccine and this vaccine program, but a greater acceptance of other vaccines and, in fact, other state programs. With there being a deep sense of skepticism and a real suspicion surrounding state initiatives, we as a group believe that one of the best ways to combat it is by involving the citizens who will be affected in the broader discussion. We really think this would lead to a greater sense of ownership of the state on behalf of the citizen, and it would also lead to a belief, and it would also be true, that the views and concerns of the citizen are being taken seriously and are being taken on board when national decisions are being made. Next, we will look at crime in the country and the responses from across the political aisle. In an article from the Jamaica Gleaner titled "Slippery Slope on Crime," Golding, the opposition leader took issue with earlier statements by the security minister, who said that, and I quote, "the administration cannot be vetoed in carrying out executive action in the face of crisis," end quote, as well as, quote, "it is inappropriate to block executive attempts in the interest of the people," unquote. Mr. Golding noted that the government is expected to work within the laws and constitution of the country, and that any deviation from that could be a slippery slope from a government built and operating on laws to a government built and operating around power. In a separate article, this time from the same Gleaner, titled "Government Redoubling Efforts on Crime Legislative Agenda," Chang, the Security Minister, Dr. Horace Chang, stated that the government, in its effort to curb crime, will be looking to introduce a new Firearms Act, amend the anti-gang legislation, and add regulations to the current act surrounding MOCA. Now, he did all this even though he admitted that the government, in its earlier iteration, that is in the last term, the last administration, the last parliamentary administration, had not passed as many laws as it would have liked to have aided in the effort of crime fighting. He then went on to praise the Jamaica Eye initiative, say that it's been very successful so far in its rollout. It's helped in the capture of many criminals right after committing their crimes, and that to assist the Jamaica Eye program, they were seeking to have a quick response team operating in the corporate area by the end of February. Now, the statements by Mr. Golding are welcome. The government, be it through the use of the state of emergencies or some of the utterances by the Attorney General, give the serious impression that they feel that they can ignore the Constitution and laws in general in an effort to fight crime. And that must not be allowed. We have a history of politicians and governments just ignoring laws in order to combat crime, and it has not worked. So calling it out is always appreciated. It is also good to see that the minister, rather than doubling down on those statements, has instead said that legislation is going to be passed and programs are going to be introduced to complement existing structures. Those actions which are constructive and not breaching rights and existing laws are welcome, and they must be continued. Now, in an article from the Jamaica Observer titled "We Are Facing a Crime Epidemic," says PSOJ president, the head of the PSOJ, Keith Duncan, noted that we have quite frankly been at a crisis level regarding crime in the nation because we're experiencing over 1,000 murders. We've been at this crisis level for over 20 years. And in this 20-year period, we've had both parties in power, and they have failed to deal with it. The article also went on to note that Keith Duncan and his PSOJ team said that the social intervention programs are very disjointed. They're just not working. They're not monitored. They're not targeted, and therefore they fail to deliver on the required results, on the expected results, on communities being not only pacified but transformed. Uh, the PSOJ president also highlighted that there's a real need for restorative justice programs, and and his team really lamented the fact that there's a lack of value of life, especially with the rising trend of contract killings, stating that all sectors need to get on board to tackle the crime. The contract killings especially were highlighted because these murders are seemingly stemming from really petty arguments. This call by the PSOJ is something we at LAND support. We have seen too many administrations talk a good game on crime while doing very little to none of the hard work, putting crime fighting measures, which are needed, ahead of crime prevention measures, which are also needed. More investment must be given to these crime prevention measures, such as social intervention programs, such as the Peace Management Initiative, and such as restorative justice programs, which the Justice Minister has said will be rolled out in a quicker fashion. Um, the groups involved in these, however, the groups involved in these efforts, they must be held accountable, and they must be asked, forced even to, or even given. They must be asked to write up concrete plans. They must be given concrete plans with practical results and achievable deadlines, so that we can see what progress, if any, is being made, and if there is progress, how can we maintain it, and if there isn't any progress, how can we do things differently. As was noted in this article, um, tackling crime will by necessity require all parts of the nation to play their role. And again, as highlighted in the same article, with the issue now a systemic and cultural problem, people being murdered over a simple quarrel and people not thinking twice about it, as well as the hard-nosed boots on the ground approach, we really must have social agents, and we must provide for them, and we must not just provide for the social agents, but we must also empower the communities we are seeking to transform if we are to ensure that we can truly put an end to this scourge of crime. Finally, we end with the issue of abortion access in Jamaica. Recently, CAPRI released a report titled Coming to Terms: The Social Costs of Unequal Access to Safe Abortions. And on Thursday, February 4th, held an online panel discussion about the report itself and abortion in Jamaica in general. The discussion noted that despite abortion being illegal in all forms in Jamaica currently, we currently have anywhere between 6 to 22,000 abortions, leaning more towards the higher number, and accurate numbers are hard to gather because, again, as mentioned earlier, the practice of abortion is currently illegal in all cases. The study noted that rather than being quote-unquote promiscuous, women who are seeking abortions are more often than not victims of gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, being forced to have sex without a condom, or in some cases simply not knowing how to use a contraceptive due to poor or non-existent sex education in our schools. It was also noted that as far back as 1975, the then government acknowledged in a paper the realities that it is poorer women who are disproportionately impacted and affected negatively by the lack of safe abortions, and it suggested legalizing abortion in some cases. This measure was later dropped due to the pushback from the religious community. This was the same reason for the measure being dropped in the 2000s. The discussion and the panel also noted the socio-economic impacts. Some of the examples they gave, some of the socio-economic impacts and reasons why we should be looking towards legalizing abortion, is that one of the largest reasons for girls leaving school early is pregnancy, is teenage pregnancy. And that 60% of those girls who are pregnant and drop out of school never return to school, and in fact have a second pregnancy in their adolescence. It also pointed out how a cycle of poverty is formed and in some cases continued, as it is mainly the poorer girls who are getting pregnant and who are dropping out due to these early pregnancies. They can't access the abortions, the safe abortions, or even the illegal abortions in the same rates that the wealthier young girls can. And how the daughters of these young mothers have a higher chance of getting pregnant at a young age and or being sexually abused, maintaining this cycle. The burden on the state was also highlighted in a couple of forms, both the health system and the education system, as a lot of children who are born after botched abortions, and they have disabilities. They have, be it physical disabilities or learning disabilities. They have associated health complications due to these botched abortions. A lot of them end up in state care, and with the mothers being trapped in that cycle of poverty, they are then on the PATH program and other benefits acting as that quote unquote drag on the state. It also pointed out in the socioeconomic section that when girls are able to leave school, when they are able to complete school and get a full education, go on to tertiary education, it boosts the nation's human capital resources because people are well trained. It also increases productivity because we have more people in the labor force and we have better trained people in the labor force. It also they also spoke about research showing that a simple 2% increase of women in the workforce would see hundreds of millions of dollars added to our economy and millions more to our GDP. The presentation itself and the report they're rather refreshing in that it departed from the moralistic reasons, and moralistic reasons are important, but it is key that we depart from them in this discussion when supporting the pro-choice cause. It instead gave us hard data and numbers about how criminalizing abortion is impacting us negatively, and it showed us hard data about how legalizing abortion would positively impact us as a society. This argument, an argument based around facts, numbers, and cold hard reality, teamed up with a moral argument, is needed if this issue is to be resolved and if women are to be able to access safe abortions. We welcome the paper. We welcome these discussions and believe that it does show the growing support behind this issue. As the discussion pointed out, the issue at hand is one of civil rights, and with large sectors of society, including some religious entities, in support of the pro-choice cause, we feel the government should take the initiative and pass legislation legalizing abortion in order to save lives and ensure better futures for women and girls, as well as boosting productivity and easing the burden on the state. Once again, this is Alexander Scott presenting Lands Updates.